Hello. So today we're going to go through a reaction to a video that I just saw, and I'm going to bring it up. It's about Dr. John Dee. And I've been so very excited about the rise of awareness within the UFO community and the general community about John Dee because he's so fascinating. And so this is the video. It's the Macabre John Dee. It's by Camp Gagnon. I pay attention to Camp Gagnon because of his interviewing of J. Christopher King, who is related to um, a series of reporting from Ralph Blumenthal about the UAP disclosure stuff. And if you're aware of UAP things or UFOlogy now, you know who Ralph Blumenthal is. You know about the 2017 New York Times article that opened up mainstream discussion about UFOs. And he wrote this article for the debrief, which was about alien abductions and modern day alien abductions. And it all talked about John Mack and his influence there. And it named several prominent abductees like J. Christopher King and Stuart Davis, who have the experienced group online support group space. So I've been paying attention to it for this reason. And he has a really interesting clip in one of these where J. Christopher King is talking to Camp Gagnon about his encounter. So I keep going back to that, and I went back to that recently because I explored a triangle that J. Christopher King uses in the Cosmoesis podcast, and so I went back to his testimony about his encounter. But then this came up today, so the macabre Dr. John Dee, and at the end of here, um, I mean, this guy does a great job of introducing who John Dee is, the significance. I mean, he really explains it for you in a very skilled way, which does not have a lot of errors in it, by the way, which is wonderful. The only like technical error I saw was how was referring to how Dr. John Dee refers to Enochian language, right? He called it the celestial speech or the angelical language, not necessarily the Enochian language. Um, but besides that, I mean, oh my God, in terms of presentation, it's very spot on. It's very good. Um, there is a characterization of Edward Kelley that I would talk about and explore in this context because the characterization of Edward Kelley is very much like what you get in the English speaking world. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I've paid attention to Vincent Bridges' content and its influence on Terry Burns, who talks about how prominent Edward Kelley is in continental alchemy. So that's one thing I would pay attention to go, maybe Edward Kelley was smeared a little bit more than John Dee even. Maybe he was blamed, but actually there's a deeper truth. And that's something I'm going to advocate, and I'll show you how and why through this video. Um, Now I want to establish, um, well, actually, let's go to the end here so you can hear what this podcaster has to say. This is it. Yeah, we'll start here.
A simple story like a genius or a fool. He's both happening at the same time. So the next time, someone calls you crazy for your hobbies, remember, at least you're not, trying to talk to an angel with a stone. So,
So I wanted to stop there to be sort of funny and show you that my hobby actually for a while was, where is this? You get to go through all of it. Um was talking to an angel in a stone. I'll just find it here for you because I want to show you exactly what I'm doing. So here I've got the Call of Lil, the first Aether. This is Enochian magic. I'll tell you what's happening. This mirror, that mirror, that's an obsidian mirror. I put that on a table. That's called a holy table. It has sigils and things like that on it. It's magic. It's ceremonial magic. You see things in my In the video, you'll see the main square. That's a video over my shoulder. I didn't really know what was going to happen when I did my Enochian magic. I thought maybe an alien would teleport in or something, so I decided to record everything. I have a recording of the mirror. You can see that, as well as in the bottom right-hand corner, there's two shortwave radios. They're tuned to the same frequency, allegedly according to human-initiated contact experiencers. That's CE5, that's contacting aliens using technological and psionic means. According to these people, if you have two radios that are tuned to the same frequency and one goes off and the other doesn't, or they behave differently, then something anomalous is happening causing it, and it's probably communication in response to your invocation. So I recorded those. There was a lot of activity in this calling, but it happened throughout the experience. I just wanted to show you that I'm demonstrating objective proof of what I'm talking about. That I've practiced Enochian magic as well as studied some of it. I'm invoking the name of the angels that I'm talking to through the stone. Now, I'm not sure if that's a crazy hobby or not, but I wanted to share that. Um, from there, I wrote a book on this. You can get to my research books. You can get some information about my books here, but I just wanted to show you, I wrote all of these books in response to doing this work. And I wrote this book, the Book of Galactic Light, which transcribes the visions I saw into text. So you can get there. Um, so let's go back to what he had to say. So I have this hobby. I have some experience in this. I want to respond to the questions he has so that I can provide some perspective or something, because he's asking questions at the end, and I love that. So let's listen to it.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is the life of John Dee. Did I miss anything? Is there anything in here that I overlooked? Anything that I got wrong? Please drop a comment. I read all of them. YouTube, Spotify, I go through every last one. So just be nice about it, all right? Was John Dee the brilliant polymath you got in over his head? Was he, an intelligence gathering officer working for the Queen, going around Europe, picking up info, picking up clues? Or was he, just a dumb guy that got conned? Or was he all three all at once? Please drop a comment. Let me know. Christos, you ever heard of this guy?
Haven't heard of him, but if they say you can't.
Okay, so this is why I'm making a response, because he says he'll read it. I want to talk about this because this is really important, what he's touching into. And the reason why I'm taking the time to respond to him is you can see he's had conversations with UFOologists, particularly Kelly Chase, J. Christopher King. He's then had this in video with Darcy Weir and Jordan Slather, who exposes frauds in the UFOology community. So there's some sensitivity already. And the question I want to address was, did Edward Kelley con John Dee? What does that have to do with our interpretations of the reality of Enochian magic? Is it crazy or not? Did Kelley con John Dee? Now, my question is, when we listen to stories like J. Christopher King's story in the cultural rise of alien abductions, are we being conned? Because if we look back to the definitions of the UFO abduction syndrome, it now, for my reading of that literature, says, yes, indeed, we're being conned. That Ralph Blumenthal does not understand the difference between hypnagogic hallucinations, sleep paralysis things, and actually alien abductions. He just doesn't, and that's fine. And I'm going to talk about this experience. He doesn't understand it because he looked to John Mack to understand it. Everyone's looking to John Mack to understand this one claim that the alien encounter is not a dream because it is real. So everyone's looking to that. I'm going to say that it's actually both a dream and real, which explains why some of the fishy aspects of J. Christopher King's story, might feel like we're being conned because the only proof is from ex-girlfriends or ex-wives that he doesn't want to talk with. right? So like, trust me, bro, but my girlfriend can prove it, but I totally had a girlfriend, right? Like it's that's level of proof, right? But I'm saying that it actually was a dreamlike experience. Everyone has dreamlike experiences, and that it is real. And how it can be real is through shamanic ways of being, so shamanic understandings, right? So that's what John Mack pointed to. That's what John Dee experienced. And so what I am proposing here, and I'll get to it shortly, is that there's a historic precedent for the ETNHI contact experience UFO thing, and that is John Dee. And so, as aliens are to angels, so is remote viewing to scrying. So is John Mack to John Dee. Um, so as remote viewing is to scrying, so is how put off to John Dee. So we've got put off and Max standing in analogy with John Dee, remote viewing and alien abduction hypnosis also standing in analogy with um, John Dee's work. So we need to talk about John Mack as a believer. Um, we all know what it is to be a believer, especially someone who pays attention to so many UFO people, right? Who listening to those stories and things like that. We're believing into them. John Mack could not discern between fact and fiction. We know that from the encounter he had with Donna Bassett. John Dee also couldn't discern between fact and fiction because he was conned in part by Edward Kelley. But here's the thing. I'm saying that Edward Kelley, even though he was a con artist, was a mathematical linguistic savant that was uniquely capable of receiving a spiritual communication that actually had real impact in the world and came from real sources, albeit dreamlike and angelic or whatever. So that's the hypothesis. That's what I'm putting forward. And the question I would put to Camp Gagnon is, are you being conned by these UFO stories? Did J. Christopher King's story that can only be proven by talking to his former relationships that he doesn't want you to talk to, is that a con? Are we being conned? Is that greater con related to um, these disclosure narratives that Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean put forward? And those all seem to be pointing towards surveillance systems and intelligence community policy things like UAP Disclosure Act things. So are we being conned by some other thing that's using our stories for some political aim that we don't even know, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. The same thing with Edward Kelley. That's a question we ask is, was John Dee conned? So I'm saying just as angels and aliens and remote viewing and scrying and John Dee and John Mack are an analogy, so too is this question about us being conned by UAP disclosure narratives and John Dee being conned by Edward Kelley. So that's the setup of the thing I have to say. Um, let's get to it. Um, So the thing I need to say is that scrying as well as hypnosis are not really well understood, right? So I'm not talking to the angel through the stone per se. This is an object of meditation. It's the thing that happens is in the mind. For me, now some people is a thing where there's neurodivergence in this experience, and I'm going to return back to this understanding of neurodivergence. How we're processing information is unique. The same kind of spiritual communication could be expressed through multiple different means of knowledge and expression. So if I am in contact with the same source as you, we might be talking about different things. I'll likely talk about dreams, geometry, other things, right? Images, archetypal images, things like that. You might have some other interests, right? So I receive intuition and intuitive communication through something like Euclidean geometry, which John Dee also talked about. Now, someone else might receive that through number, And that's the same type of communication, but it's a different expression. On one hand, we have magnitude. On the other hand, we have abstract number. Now, you can take that further and put the numbers association with letters, like with gematria, and the other languages like Hebrew, that association. And this is where John Dee is thinking you can go even further to the first language, the Enochian language, and you start to have these different means of communication that are active, right? Um, so we're not actually looking at angels in the crystal ball per se. It's a unique response to it, let's say. One thing that is, however, common is this sort of magical quality to it. And I wanted to point back to one of the 5 books of mystery. So this is where we encounter some of John Dee's writing, and he was a spy. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt and interpret it. But he writes, and this is back when Edward Kelley was abbreviated as Edward Talbot, E.T. And I love this, that he's like talking to E.T. back then. So only Michael appeared. That's the Archangel Michael. And Dee says, to diverse my complaints and requests said, Michael says, the Lord shall consider thee in this world and in the world to come. Edward says, all the chair seemed on fire. So he's feeling fire. Then Michael says, this is one action in one person. I speak of you too. And so speak of you too, right? So then Dee writes, you mean us two to be joined so, and in mind united, as if we were one man. And Michael says, thou understandest. Take heed of punishment for your last slackness. If you mean any slackness on my behalf, truly it was and is for lack of ability to buy and prepare things appointed of you. I pray for that ability, and so I make speed. And then so it's just so fascinating. So then they talk about a layman, and so he's receiving the tools of Enochian magic through this interaction with Michael, Archangel Michael, through Edward Talbot, which is the name of Edward Kelley as he presents it. So they're saying you need to be of one mind as one person doing this action. And that for me shows me there's a quality to this interaction that's very, very, very similar to Dr. John Mack's work. So in the discussion of his work in the introduction of Mack's book, Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, he says, in this work, as in any clinically sound investigation, the psyche of the investigator, or more accurately, the interaction of psyches of the client and clinician, is the means of gaining knowledge. But it must be noted that although we analyze and formulate as objectively as possible afterward, the original information was obtained non-dualistically, i.e. through the intersubjective unfolding of the investigator-abductee interaction. Right? So that is a clue we're dealing with a similar state. Now, John Mack worked with sleep paralysis experiencers. They experience sleep paralysis. That's the vibratory state John King is talking about. The electricity he's feeling is common as they call it a vestibular motor bodily sensation or something like that. It is associated with entity encounters. It is associated with a feeling of ultra reality. This was described by Alan Worsley, who is the first dreamer to scientifically prove lucid dreaming. So we know what we're talking about. These are hallmarks of these experiences. Now, whether or not these are caused by earthlight things like plasmoid consciousnesses is something yet to be discerned because of the work of people like Michael Persinger. So to continue, thus the reporting of that experience and the receiving of that experience through the psyche of the investigator are, in absence of physical verification or proof, the only way we can know about abductions is through an intersubjective means of knowledge. That means we're talking about the same type of evidences for aliens as John Dee and his angels. And I think that's just fascinating. So here we have both John Dee and John Mack having an inability to discern whether or not they're being conned by people that seem to be communicating rich structures of meaning. Now, Bassett is sort of a different case. Donna Bassett, who was the person who cloned John Mack on the record, right, is a little bit different. Although if we continue this line of thinking further, we might say that Bud Hopkins cloned John Mack in the training of him. So, um, so, um, so the question for me is, are we being conned by the UFO disclosure narrative? Are we being conned by that, right? Like let's see if we can find that even. It says like UFO expert on Brazil. Yeah.
Small device that was
Is
almost
this
that
moment
was
conning us and
like
conning Camp
maybe
Gagnon?
about the size of a mic or something like that. Like, but there was
That's my question, right? Because J. Christopher King stands in for the alien abduction narrative by way of this paper, right? Like, is this conning us? Is this conning us? It conned me for a while. I believed in these things in a much more physicalized way than I do now. But I still say there's something interesting here. And the reason being the mechanism of that thing interesting, actually, let's get to it, is a known experience. Yeah, I just wanted to also show, right? We're interested in Enochian magic right now, in part because of this tweet, right? So this tweet included an image of the Siglum de Ameth. This is Matthew Brown. That came from this content creator, Frater Eleftheria. He points to my work here at this timestamp. So I'm just demonstrating to you that I'm actually like the only like one of the authorities in this field because of the experiment I'm talking about. But we're talking about the solution here to the con. We're not on one level, yes, we're conned by the psyop. On one level, Edward Kelley is getting paid in part because he's a liar, right? And he manipulated himself into that situation. But I'm saying Edward Kelley likely was a savant of some form that is receiving a communication. And we see a history of angelic kind of interactions in dream states that lead to innovative ideas, lead to mathematical understandings, lead to technical understandings. And here's a great history of it that includes a discussion about John Dee here. And so there's a long history of people actually interacting with angels through these dreamlike ways that often seem fantastic, but there's actually something real there. And that's what I'm saying happened. Edward Kelley conned himself into this non-dual relationship with John Dee, and the angels, who may be non-human intelligences, aliens, or whatever, started inspiring creative expression through a mathematical linguistic faculty that was mediated by John Dee's magical operation of the situation, just like in remote viewing experiences, the person's savant skill, which is the imagery they're receiving from the psychic means, is activated and like directed through the remote viewing protocols and I call it interlocution, but it's the person who's operating the session and asking the questions. That's the same relationship. So that thing activates a mathematical linguistic savant skill in some people that is constellated with encounters, like hypnagogic encounters and things like that, which is why we think of alien abduction. The examples in my life, it's like this gentleman, Jimmy Blanchett, who I think is a mathematical savant, right? Like you can see examples of that in the thumbnails here. right? And I know he's a sleep paralysis experiencer and stuff like that. I know he can't discern between Starlink and actually these orbs, but I believe these sometimes plasma orbs do show up, so they're tricky. But I know he can't discern, and he's also a sort of savant skill sort of thing. And I say savant skill because it's, I mean, he turns to the work of Bruce Gatti to help interpret his thing, and it's the same sort of thing. And sometimes this just gets activated by the UFO thing, to be honest. Here's another example of a savant that I feel was activated through magic. This is Enochian.today. He's completing the language and things like that. There's level of understanding of the mathematical, the numbers and the letters corresponding with Enochian that feels like it's revealing structures in the in consciousness similar to like the Kabbalah and things like that. So I'm saying this, that Edward Kelley has a savant skill that is sort of expressing something from this realm of non-human intelligences. Similarly, I would say that J. Christopher King and these experiencers have a sort of connection to that realm that's expressed through their unique modes of perception and expression. So some people understand these things as ultra real and they don't get beyond the experience of the ultra reality, which was categorized and documented by Alan Worsley in his lucid dreaming experiments that proved lucid dreaming. So we have that documentation. We go, some people don't get beyond that phase, and we understand that, right? Some people can look into that. So I am saying that Edward Kelley was a con man, but he was a savant as well, and he connected into that realm. Whatever realm actually brings up all these insights that we can see in the history of mysticism in mathematics. So I'm saying that that thing is real, and that we traditionally understand through the context, or has been traditionally understood through traditions of dream shamanism. So dream shamanism, and shamanism has a very blurred boundary between dreams and reality. And that's something John Mack noted. He died too early to actually complete that course of literature to really explicate it to us. And that's why there's confusions. That's why there's confusions. And so I'm saying that Dee and Kelley are an instance of a special instance of a phenomena, of a general phenomena. A general phenomena is contact phenomena. It's inspiration through dreams and things like that. The specialization happens going into a sort of dyadic consciousness involving a lot of documentation, like hypnosis, like remote viewing. So, and further, I say it was specialized through a kind of unique mathematical linguistic savant skill that Edward Kelley seemed to have, that some people seem to have. That's something we could likely search and explore and experiment with together. That's something that I'm doing in my own life and practice. So like, how can we use this, right? Like if I'm not taken in by the superficial narratives of someone's alien accounts, but I can actually hone in onto the real connections happening that stand within a real legacy of this type of communication, then what can we do from that greater perspective? And so that's one of the reasons why I'm responding to Camp Gagnon's video about this, because there's enough context now in the UFO community. We know who John Dee is. We know who Hal Puthoff is. We know who John Mack is. We know remote viewing stuff. We know about psionics. We know about shamanism. We just, there needs to be a little bit more expansion around, or understanding around, the biases we hold about reality and dreams, so that we can reduce the trigger when we have to approach something like J. Christopher King's testimony, where he goes, clearly this is a dream he's misinterpreted, right, as real, right? Or it's like, so John Mack went around to all these sleep paralysis victims, right? And he went, that's real, therefore it's not a dream, it's not sleep paralysis, therefore it was caused by gray aliens and their technology paralyzing you. I guess in the same way that sleep paralysis paralyzes you. But so you have to go on that journey. when you say that these experiences are real and therefore not dreams, and I'm just saying they're real and dreamlike, and so let's work with them together in those ways. And I'm suggesting that the UFO community actually is at this point, having worked with a number of the ideas like psionics and things like that. So I'm very excited to see where the UFO community is. I'm super glad that this video was made. It's like really great. It's a really great introduction to John Dee stuff. I wish it was there for me 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I'm so excited to see what happens with all of the next people who are inspired to do Enochian and discover that they are as skilled as John Dee and Edward Kelley to connect with a realm of angels, and they don't have to be as confused as John Dee may have been, because we have a lot more capacity to communicate with one another. And so with that, I'll just invite any other conversation, right? Any other questions? If there's any questions you have, or to continue the conversation, I read my comments too. I appreciate it when people are nice. I hope this has been a nice response to your great video. And I just wish you and everyone who has seen this all the best. And with that, may you dream well.